Now, I've often wanted to write a whole article or a book. You could do a book called Is She or Isn't She? And it would be, basically, it would discuss the many dolls over the years that we as collectors or researchers have projected are portraits of well-known luminaries, celebrities, royalties, historical figures of the 19th century. The half-doll period went deeply into this, and some of them we have good verification of, others we don't. But I thought I would give you an example of how this whole idea of producing dolls based on luminaries began much earlier on. In this case, in the 1850s or 60s. This wonderful porcelain doll known as the Morning Glory Lady, which every collector who loves China dolls needs to have in their collection, is based on research done by Marianne Cieslik of Germany, is a portrait of the beloved Princess Elizabeth, known as Sissy, of Austria, and based upon a very famous painting done of her with the morning glories in her hair. And so you can see that, and this, by the way, is featured in our antique auction the day before the half-doll auction. But I wanted you to see how this trend of doing this continued, and how the very same porcelain manufacturers who made these wonderful porcelain dolls of the mid-1800s evolved gradually but naturally into creating some of the finest half-dolls. I have on the table here a selection of dolls that are portraits of famous people of the 1900s and early 20th century. Some of them actually authenticated by the very manufacturers that this is what they were trying to create, and others kind of hypothetical. And that's where we come into the magic of the is she or isn't she. This is a big field that any of you who are looking for something special to get into, when you look through the whole catalog of all of the half dolls from this auction, you can look at others and say, oh, I recognize that. That's from a very famous painting by so-and-so. Or, oh, I recognize that person. I've seen them in paintings. And you can start to collect. Your whole collection could be based around is she or isn't she? Portraits of luminaries of the past. So one of the things we're grateful for is the Goebel firm of Germany in the 1911 produced their catalog, and in their catalog they listed the half dolls that they were creating that were portraits of famous people. It gets even better because they also put on the base of these half dolls a gold label identifying who the person was representing. And in this case, for example, we have Marie Theresa, 1769. That is who she is representing. And I want to turn it around so you can see the wonderful detail. I'm going to show you the top of her head, too, the crown. So here we have an absolutely identified portrait half doll. Let me show you her crown. Then next to her, we have another one from the Goebel series. These are identified in the Goebel series by model number, by name. And in this case, we actually have the labels. In this case, merely a fragment of the label, but it is there. And she has this wonderful, wonderful coronet on her, which is very beautiful to see. And she has, notice the jewelry, notice her crown, all of the wonderful details. Now we come to a group that we just don't know. But what I have done is I have gone back and I've looked at paintings and I've tried to find people who they might be representing, believing that these also came from a historical series. This woman is truly my favorite. She is so elegant. And by the way, the half dolls that are nude are not nude because they're kind of trying to be sexy or something, but they're nude because it was designed that the costume that would be made for the pincushion would then also form into the bodice, and there would be a fabric covered bodice as well. So that's why this beautiful lady, and look at her, look at that necklace. Now I found two paintings that I believe could be her. Look at the details of the flowers in her hair. Look at the jewelry, including the throat piece, the earrings. It's absolutely wonderful. Now, it's my opinion, and we're showing you two paintings that will correspond to this, and you can decide, or perhaps you would find another one, that she's either Maria Carolina of Naples or the Prussian Queen Elizabeth, once again, shown with wonderful flowers in her hair. So you can decide, but definitely when you see a face like this, it's so distinctive, you know that has got to be a portrait. Now, there were, we're going to start over here with these two wonderful pieces right here, once again showing you how the manufacturers would take the same basic model and in one case make this large figurine with a wildly feathered hat, and in another case take the same figurine from the waist up and it becomes, voila, a half doll. And I'm going to turn these both around so you can see the back side. And who do you think this is representing? Representing Marie Antoinette, and inspired by the famous painter from her court, the female painter from her court, of Vigny Lebrun, who specialized in these very, very elegant paintings, and in her case, Marie Antoinette with these exaggerated bonnets, of which she was very famous for having the exaggerated bonnets. And I'm going to pull those down now because I want to show you another one of my favorites. I know many collectors say the same thing. This model is based on a portrait of the famous 1800s actress, Moll Raymond, also based on the portrait done by Vigny Lebrun. And please look at her hair at the back. It's loose from the back of her torso and it's flowing out the back. It's also designed with a little hole so a feather could be stuck into her hat. And also designed as, when you look at the portrait painting, which we're showing you, when you look at that, you'll see the actual portrait painting. Moll Raymond was holding a muff in her hands, and this was designed with the hands just far enough away from her torso so that when a person was costumed, she's nude again, as the other one was, they could also put a little fur muff in her hand, just like the painting. So there was a lot of thought that went into the production of this for the person who was painting it, adding their own, or costuming it, adding their own little details. It's a wonderful piece. And we have another, and this is based on, I'm going to put her up here as well. This is based on a very famous paintings of the Princess Lamballe, known for wearing this hat with a coronet of flowers around it. And definitely based upon the painting that you are looking at, you'll see that this was inspired by the painting of Princess Lamballe. One of my favorites, because one of my favorite 19th century people is this image of the Empress Eugenie of France. And we're showing you a painting which will confirm to you without any question that this is who she is designed to be. She was also by Goebel, and she was one of the dolls that was listed in their inventory or their catalog they produced in 1910, 1911. And remember that 1911 date again, that's that famous date when the Munich Art Fair took place, when the half dolls were introduced. So at that time they did their series. When you're looking at half dolls, you look for all sorts of details, like the way the hair is modeled in the back as well as the front. You do want to see that. And look at the jewelry, unusual green necklace around her neck, and the rose in her hair and the rose at her bodice. Empress Eugenie, just a fascinating historical person. You know, she came from Spain when she was just a young child. She married Napoleon III when she was a young woman, and she was, with everything that went on, she was so important in the history of France and the development of the arts and cultures there. And after she was forced to abandon the throne, she went to England and she lived there. She lived until, I think, the 1920s. She flew in an airplane. What an incredible life. We tend to isolate her in our mind of this 1860 period in France, but she had a full and wonderful life. And now we come to another one, and this is very, very famous. This is based upon the very famous 18th century dancer, La Camargo, and based upon a painting done of her. And again, if you look at the painting we're showing you, you'll see that this was exactly inspired by it. What I found interesting is La Camargo made famous the use of flat shoes in doing the ballet, so what we call the ballerina slipper today. But this example, look, the shoes are heeled. I found that so interesting. This is a half doll with a muslin torso and upper legs and the porcelain lower legs. So they kind of put the wrong legs on her when they created this doll. Or perhaps it was before she introduced it, I don't know. Now, I have two others here in the front I want to show you because the designing of portrait dolls went well into the 20th century, and I have two examples to show you here that I love. And again, this is a field that I think is so fertile for someone doing more investigation of who these figures represented, these popular figures. There are so many of them from I'm going to be showing you some in a few minutes, that are from that 1920 period that you can't help but look at old film star things and wonder, is this or isn't it? Is it just a style based on that person, or is it a portrait of that person? Well, of this one, there can be little doubt. This one was inspired clearly by Louise Brooks, known as Lulu, an early silent film star, and she made famous this very angular cut of her hair, not just the bangs, but the very sharp angular cut. Also famous was she always had like a little, if you see the old photographs of her in the 1920s, she has like this little slit in her hair where there's a little air coming through. And this half doll was designed that exact same way. Look at that in the bangs. And when I turn it around now, you'll see it at the side of her head. You'll see that white little slit showing there. And done with the mask in her hand. So, Lulu Brooks. Wonderful one. I want you to see the back too, because look at the muscles in the back. Oh, it's so beautifully designed. And then we have, and this was discovered by the Shorens when they wrote their wonderful book on the half dolls. And this is a portrait of a famous Folie Bergère performer, Gita, in Paris in the 1920s. And there is a poster of her wearing this exact costume for one of her appearances. So this half doll was clearly created as a portrait of her, and we're showing you a picture of that so you can again see how that would work.